He's Hugh.
And I'm Josh Klein, and we're the hosts of Built for Change, a podcast from Accenture.
On Built for Change, we're talking to business leaders from every corner of the world that are harnessing change to reinvent the future of their business.
We're discussing ideas like the importance of ethical AI or how productivity soars when companies truly listen to what their employees value.
These are insights that leaders need to know to stay ahead.
So subscribe to Built for Change wherever you get your podcasts.
A quick warning, there are curse words that are unbeeped in today's episode of the show. If you prefer a beeped version, you can find that at our website, thisamericanlife.org.
The question started right after Tobin and his husband moved to the Bay Area and got a house together. Tobin's family was pretty excited about this. They all lived within an hour, and they brought meals over for weeks. His mom bought them shades. But this question popped up.
And the first time I noticed it happening, it was with my aunt. Kind of out of nowhere, she was like, "Oh, which one of you is handy? Is one of you handy?" And I was just like, why does she want to know that? Like, why does she care?
Yeah.
And I had like feelings about it, and I couldn't tell why. And then it just kind of kept happening with other family members. Like, they would be talking about, like, "Oh, you guys moved in together into this house. Which one of you's handy?" And on its face, it was kind of like, oh, we know when you're in a house, there's a lot of things to fix and a lot of things to do. But it felt like there was something else happening there, and it kind of bothered me.
Something else there, like there was a question underneath the question that they were trying to get the answer to.
Yeah, like there was something else trying to be figured out. And I don't know, like the more I thought about it and why I was having feelings about it, it was kind of like this weird aha moment of like, oh, I think you're asking who the man is in my relationship.
Right. You're both men.
Yes.
But one of you is really the man.
Yes. Yeah.
Then, when Tobin would tell them that it was his husband who was the handy one, he felt like he was just giving them ammunition to put a picture of their relationship that just bugged him. Like they were being sized up into familiar categories. Which of you is the husband? Which of you is the wife?
Like, it was weird because whenever they would ask it, I could feel myself getting defensive. I didn't want to give them that picture. And I think part of my defensiveness came from, oh man, not to take us in a whole other direction, but if you spend any amount of time in the closet.
In the closet. For Tobin, that means middle school and high school.
I think you're afraid of being found out at all as being effeminate in any way. Yeah. Like, I know for me, I was very conscious of if anyone could detect, quote unquote, feminine traits about me and then figure out if I was gay or not. And so I do think that, like, myself and a lot of gay men, like, carry that around for, like, kind of the rest of your life. And so I think that comes up in having to answer a question like this also.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because it's like this innocent question and then really like underneath it, it's like there's a bomb waiting to go off actually. Like there's so many feelings.
Yeah, it feels like it hits on a thing, at least for me, that I spent a lot of time as a kid running from or spent a lot of time trying to not have to answer.
Yeah.
Like, how masculine am I? And is somebody else more masculine than I am? And like, I do want to make room for the idea that they could have meant none of this. Like, absolutely none of this.
Did you address it directly with any of them?
No, because that would be bonkers. To say, oh, you asked me who's handy. You're trying to say I'm not a man. Like that, the leap in logic to say that outright is so huge.
Put it in our program. Questions that contain other secret questions inside of them. Questions that are wolves in sheep's clothing. In all kinds of situations that we've all been in dating, in talking to strangers, in dealing with the saddest things that ever happened to us. And more. From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. Stay with us. Okay, so instead of 4 different acts today, what we're going to do is we're going to present the show as 4 questions. Here's the first one. Question, tell me how you feel about this. So Tobin, who you just heard, is one of the editors here at our show. And really the idea for today's program came out of a conversation that happened at a staff meeting. And what happened was we all got talking about these kind of question traps, where it seems like somebody's asking about one thing, but the question is a proxy for trying to figure out something else. Tobin will explain more.
The conversation was about the questions people ask on first dates, the kind that force who someone really is out into the open, maybe even without them realizing. One such question I didn't even know was a thing, but a few of my coworkers said that for Black women of a certain age, it's having a kind of renaissance. Emmanuel, our executive editor, asks it this way.
What do you think of Beyonce? It was a question that I found myself trying to ask basically a lot on first dates because it told me a lot about them. It's a question that tells you, one, in some ways how they feel about a powerful Black woman. It's a question that tells you how they think about Black women in general, kind of a little bit to me. And that, like, if you feel the need to, like, put her down or, like, say something negative about her, it's like a real turnoff. It's like a red flag, basically.
They describe her singing style as kind of like caterwauling or like, oh, she's just screeching.
Bim, another producer, has also asked this question on many a date.
All these words that sort of like have double meanings if you're a woman and also if you're a Black woman. I'm just like, all right, so you don't like loud people. Okay. That means you don't like me.
Could you tell me about some, like, specific times that you've asked the Beyonce question and what the guy's response was and what it told you?
First date, bar date, pretty standard. Beyonce actually came on in the bar in the background. I was like, oh, what do you think about Beyonce? And he was like, I don't understand what the big deal is about her. Like, women act like they're in a cult or something. And it's like, they seem like crazy. I was like, oh, well, I really like her. And like, I don't really think I'm in a cult.
Emmanuel walked the guy through all the reasons Beyonce is, in fact, pretty great. But the guy didn't budge.
No, he did not, didn't care to. And maybe didn't care to hear me talk in general is what it seemed like. So
they did not go out again because, well, you could say he was unapologetic when he fucked up the night. That's a play on a Beyonce lyric, by the way. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Anyway, B.A. Parker, who's also been on the show, she said for her, it doesn't even have to be Beyonce. Any well-known Black woman does the trick.
If you say Serena Williams and they say, oh, I think she's overrated. Or if you say Jada Pinkett, it's like, well, she's too masculine, or she's ruining Will Smith's life. She's controlling him. Or how do you feel about Lizzo? Like, she needs to cover her ass. I bring up like a Black female celebrity to get their opinion on them, and it usually becomes like a litmus test for how they would treat me as a partner, how they would view me as a person.
But the Beyonce question, she agrees, is the most potent, because the answer can really tell you if you should be crazy in love or putting everything he owns in a box to the left. Again, I am so sorry. The thing about a bunch of people using the same trick, though, is that eventually people, in this case men, might catch on. Are you aware of the Beyonce question?
Yes, I am aware of the Beyonce question.
Emmanuel Jochi, producer and man at the show. Have you experienced this?
Yeah, I've experienced it many times.
He told me about a date he was on where they started talking about musicals, and the movie version of Dreamgirls came up. And thinking he was just answering a question about the movie, Emmanuel was honest. He said, Beyonce was just okay in that. He didn't realize he was answering the wrong question.
And I was just digging a hole. She was just like, the only answer to being asked about Beyonce is that, yes, she's fantastic, she's amazing, nobody can do what she does.
It was only later that he learned from another guy friend why he as a Black man should really only answer one way.
I remember my friend saying, basically, that is the question Black women will ask you to determine if you really like Black women. Once it was explained to me, like, I totally understood where people were coming from. And I understood what the purpose of that question was.
In some cases, the Beyonce question is like an agreed-upon farce, where both parties know they're talking in code. Parker was recently on a date, she mentioned Beyonce's Black is King film.
And he was like he was like, I don't know what to say here, because I like this. I like talking to you, but I don't love Beyonce, and I don't want you to be mad at me.
He knew it was a trap.
He did know it was a trap.
And how did you respond?
I was like, what are you talking about? What are you? And he was like, I know girls do this. And I was like, you're right. And I'm sorry. I apologized. And I was like, well, I guess that's kind of the right answer. So we had a couple more dates.
Of course, there are other questions like the Beyonce one. Little traps we set on dates, hoping the other person doesn't fall in, or hoping they do. One that made the news recently, which may or may not be true. According to an old classmate, Governor Ron DeSantis would ask dates if they liked Thai food. But, and this is key, he'd pronounce it Thai food. And if they said, no, it's Thai food, not Thai, he'd ditch the date. It was his way of testing if they'd correct him, which he did not want. I don't know, sounds like a test I'd be grateful to fail, but that's just me. Anyway, I talked to a bunch of other people about their question traps. Kelsey in Minnesota asked her dates about their favorite Tom Hanks movies. She said he's been in so many movies across multiple genres. The answer is kind of like a personality test. Toy Story, for example, tells her there's a stunted adolescence thing going on. Sarah in Tampa said when she started to get a weird vibe, she'd ask, what's your favorite conspiracy theory? Most people would keep their answers lighthearted, but occasionally someone would go all in. One guy started talking all about Nazi separatists. She's Jewish, so kind of a deal breaker. But not all question traps are subtle. There's another genre that I was surprised anyone fell for. The kind of question that seemed covered in yellow caution tape and a sign that said, this is a trap. This one comes from Vivian in Iowa. After her husband died in 2016, she found herself back out on the dating scene. Her question on a date was, if your ex walked by right now with their new partner, what would you do? Which was her way of asking a much more interesting question, how fucked up was your last relationship?
First time I did it, the guy said I would punch him and give her a piece of my mind.
Oh my God.
Exactly. We had just sat down to have a nice lunch on a Sunday afternoon, so I'm like, do I get up and go? Or and that's when the story came out of how he was still about a couple weeks away from going to court for finalizing his divorce. And it had been a 38-year relationship, and he found out she had been cheating for most of the time in a completely serendipitous way. She gave him an old phone and that she had wiped, and when she downloaded the cloud, it downloaded into his phone too. And that's how he found out.
Wow, you got so much information from that one question.
You got to make it efficient. So why draw it out?
I was shocked. This question is so clearly, how bad was your last breakup? Do I have anything to worry about? But something about turning it into a fun little icebreaker made these guys open up.
There was another guy that said, well, we would have to leave immediately because I don't want to see them. And my reply was, you don't want to see them or you don't want them to see us?
And what was his response?
He never answered directly, but I knew then that he was still in a relationship.
With her now husband, they met at a widow's support group. He talked about his loneliness and being a single parent. They kind of just got each other. And she knew the question, what would you do if your ex showed up, would not be right for this nice guy who had just lost his wife. She wasn't going to ask that. The last person I talked to was Jessica. She teaches ESL classes in Atlanta. What's your go-to question?
Do you believe in ghosts?
Ghosts? I bet you didn't see that one coming, did you? Do you believe in ghosts? Here's how Jessica says it works.
There is no one right answer. It just matters that you and your partner have the same answer, essentially, at its core. Your minds kind of work in a similar way.
Was there ever a time that you asked the ghost question, the person answered differently than you, and you went ahead and dated that person anyway? And how did that go?
Yeah. I was engaged before I married my husband now. And the ghost question really should have been my get the fuck out moment.
Really?
Yeah.
Her answer to the question is, I don't really believe in ghosts. But if there was evidence to the contrary, I could be convinced. I'm open to changing my mind.
And his response was, no. And there is no information that you could give me to change my mind. And I don't see why anyone would really think that.
At the time, she didn't think much about the difference in their answers. But then, as she got to know him better, other things would come up.
And I was frustrated about the fact that, everything with you is so black and white. Not everything is black and white. Sometimes they're gray. And then I kind of thought back to his answer to this question.
His rigidity was one of the big things that broke them up. Now she tells everyone she knows, if you're seeing someone new, ask them the ghost question. It could save you a lot of time. The thing about any trap, of course, is there are ways to sidestep it, disarm it. And then the person who laid the trap has to decide what to do. Emmanuel had to make such a decision.
Ironically enough, my current boyfriend had no idea who Beyonce was, who's the only person who had that response.
What did that tell you?
That he just needed, some education. He's older and he's not from this country and, doesn't listen to music really. And, by the second date, he had read the entire Wikipedia page for me, and he knew Beyonce's birthday and that she was married to Jay-Z, and he knew about the elevator fight.
Yeah, so he listened to your opinion.
Yeah, it ended up being a green flag. Now I talk to him about Beyonce all the time, and I don't necessarily think he's not going out to Beyonce concerts or anything, but he understands how important she is and how important she is to me and lets me rant about her. So that's all you ever really want, right?
It is. All I think anyone wants is someone you don't feel like you have to set a trap for. Someone who you can look at them and say, you're everything I need and more. It's written all over your face. Baby, I can feel your halo. Pray it won't fade away. Sorry, I'm gonna stop now.